All right, that blue line should be gone now. Is that what you're seeing?
It's gone, Taylor.
All right, thank you. Thank you for everyone who's joined in early. We're going to wait just a couple more minutes for the rest of our attendees to join, and then we'll get started. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm seeing multiple people joining in our webinar now that it's 2 o'clock. So we'll go ahead and wait another minute or so, and then we'll get started. All right. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining our first webinar of the new year, and Happy New Year to everyone as well. Today, we're going to be focusing on our 2026 call for projects today. Now, this webinar is a virtual information meeting for our local agency partners throughout Orange, Osceola, and Seminole counties. The agenda for today's virtual information session is fairly short, focusing on the process for our 2026 call for projects, a review of this year's category, terms, and evaluation approaches, and a walkthrough of the application portal and questions themselves. The majority of our time today will be reserved for questions, and will conclude with public comments at the end of the meeting today. If you do have a question at any point throughout today's presentation, please go ahead and submit it via the Q&A box located on the bottom of your Zoom screen. We will be monitoring the questions submitted throughout the presentation and will hopefully respond to them during our presentation today. Otherwise, we'll be getting back to them during our dedicated time for Q&A towards the end of today's meeting. And for anybody who wants to follow along with today's presentation, the 2026 Call for Project Guidelines are published to the MetroPlan Orlando website, and a direct link was just included in the chat for you all to be able to access them directly. So by the end of today's webinar, our objective is that everyone will have a strong understanding of this year's Call for Projects process, be able to identify eligible projects based upon these Call for Project guidelines, and utilize the online application portal. So with that, let's dive right into our process and key milestones for this year. The 2026 Call for Projects is designed to align and integrate with MetroPlan Orlando's annual updates to the prioritized project list and the Florida Department of Transportation's FDOT's Local Agency Program, or LAP program, intake application cycle. So starting tomorrow, our TAC and TISMO members will receive an email notification when the call for safety projects officially open. So keep an eye out on your inboxes for that. Applications for this year's cycle will be due by Friday, January 30th at 5 p.m. So please put a note in your calendars about that so we all know what's coming up. After the application portal is closed, MetroPlan Orlando staff will verify that those project applications are complete and prepare comparative summaries of the applications that we receive during this period. MetroPlan Orlando's Technical Advisory Committee established a working group to focus on this specific call for projects. So after MetroPlan Orlando compiles those comparative summaries, the working group will review those projects, the summaries, and make recommendations for which project or projects will receive funding through this 2026 call for projects process. In April 2026, the full Technical Advisory Committee will take action on the working group's recommendations to incorporate the new candidate safety projects into the prioritized project list. The draft prioritized project list will then be prepared and presented to all MetroPlan Orlando advisory committees and the MPO board during their May or June meetings later this year, with each committee and the board then taking action on the prioritized project list during their late June or early July meetings, respectively. Following the adoption of the 2026 prioritized project list, MetroPlan Orlando staff will be submitting the priority list of projects to FDOT for the local agency program intake cycle and ultimately programming. Now, as a reminder, the selected projects through this 2026 call for projects process will be implemented through that FDOT local agency program. The LAP program does have its own certification and eligibility requirements, so please keep that in mind when submitting applications through this call for projects process. Now, this year's call for projects will be focused on safety improvements to support the implementation of local government safety action plans, or Vision Zero safety action plans that have been developed throughout our region. Beginning in fiscal year 2032, there will be an estimated $3 million of funding available per year for preliminary engineering or design, construction, and CEI project phases. There are only a few items to keep in mind in terms of who may apply for this program, but also which projects are eligible for funding. In brief, any of our local governments that are able to earn LAP certification are eligible to apply under this year's call for projects. Eligible projects need to meet two primary criteria, the first being that safety countermeasure projects, that project that is going to be submitted, are identified in an adopted regional or local safety action plan, or they are on a locally identified high injury network. But either way, that candidate project must be located on a federally functionally classified road. Now, funding through this program may be used for eligible design and those preliminary engineering, construction, and CEI project expenditures. Projects also need to be consistent with both your local comprehensive and safety action plans. And as you're thinking about which projects you want to submit applications for, please keep in mind that the project must be, again, identified in an adopted regional or local safety action plan or on a locally identified high injury network. It must be located within MetroPlan Orlando's urban area boundary, must be located on or along a federally functionally classified facility, again, those classifications as a minor collector or grader. And the project, again, will be implemented via FDOT's local agency program, and local agencies must comply with the associated requirements for that program. Now, after project applications are submitted via the application portal by January 30th, again, by 5 p.m., they will be evaluated using industry standard comparative criteria as approved by our Technical Advisory Committee and listed in those call for project guidelines. These will be used to compare the projects and consider their individual needs and impacts. MetroPlan Orlando staff will prepare a summary of the submitted projects and the outcomes of these comparative criteria, so as the projects can be assessed by the Technical Advisory Committee's working group to determine which project or projects will be included in the next prioritized project list for this program. Now, as was mentioned earlier, final approval of the prioritized project list, including the selected projects from this process, will be made by the MetroPlan Orlando board. Now, the project application was designed to be simple this year, but still encompassing the necessary project information to allow us, as well as the Technical Advisory Committee Working Group, to comparatively evaluate these projects. The application consists of three primary sections, the first being agency eligibility and project-specific eligibility requirements, then detailed project information, which we'll walk through what that means in a moment, as well as a few project narratives and a description of the project's benefits. All of the project applications to be submitted this year must be done through the MetroPlan Orlando online candidate project application portal, which is linked here in this presentation in the Call for Projects guidelines published on our website with a link included in the chat for easy reference, and will also be distributed via email tomorrow when the Call for Projects officially begins. But as a bit of a preview of what will be coming online tomorrow, we're going to walk through this application and each of the questions included within it. The online application uses the Esri Survey 123 platform, which allows you to submit all of the necessary project information electronically. We will walk through, again, all these questions now so you can see what they are and see how they align with those call for project guidelines. If you have any technical difficulties while working with this application over the next month, please reach out to our MetroPlan Orlando team as soon as possible. So diving right in, as was mentioned earlier, the application begins with your agency's information. Who is the project agency sponsor? And then who is that point of contact for this application, including their name, phone number, and email address. If MetroPlan Orlando staff have any questions about your application once it's submitted, we will be contacting the person that you designate here. The next question set is which Call for Projects category you're applying for. And since we only have one category this year, that should be an easy question for everyone to answer. From there, the next set of questions focus on the project itself, including the roadway name and location, the project's starting limit, ending limit, and the total project length in miles. Once that is completed, you'll be asked to draw a map of your project's location as well. You will be using the interactive map feature included in the application portal to do this. Using the navigation buttons on the left side of the map, you should be able to zoom in and get directly to the location of your project area. From there, you should click on the Map Draw button on the right-hand side of the screen to be able to open the drawing tool to sketch your project. Once the basic project information is completed, then the application focuses on project eligibility. The majority of safety action plans throughout the region were pre-screened through the 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plans development, and eligible projects were included in the 2050 MTP's Appendix I. If your project is listed in Appendix I, then go ahead and add the associated 2050 MTP ID into the application itself using that MTP ID number question. If your project does not already have an MTP ID number, then you would enter 0 for this question. And if you run into any questions or want a little bit of help with this particular item, please reach out and we'll be able to help you. The second set of questions ask for additional information about the safety action plan or high injury network that identifies your candidate project. The third question here asks for the existing functional classification for the candidate project itself. The next two questions request the project description as well as a purpose and need statement. These two long answer boxes do have character limits, so please keep that in mind as you draft your responses. Cost estimates are also requested as part of the application process for all phases of the project. Please keep in mind that construction is estimated separately from CEI costs, and we will need both to be able to fully process your application. If a local agency plans to contribute funding to the candidate project, that can also be noted here in this application under the local agency funding contribution question. There are no matching requirements for this application, so if this is not applicable to your application, then please type the number 0 in that box and then continue forward with answering the questions. Now, there are a few questions about planning consistency included in the application as well, including a request for the local agency comprehensive plan, reference, or references that support your project. We do ask that you are specific in your references and include specific page numbers, paragraph numbers, or screenshots of the relevant pages to help us process your application quickly. We also ask that you include information about any potential project elements that could impact the project's readiness to start work in fiscal year 2032. Now, for example, are there any public involvement items, environmental or utility constraints that could delay the project's proposed start date or potentially change the project cost? If so, please include a brief description of those items in the application so that way we're aware of them. The last question in this section is for agencies that are submitting more than one application. So each project sponsor, as identified in the project guide, in the call for project guidelines, may submit up to 3 applications as part of this call for projects. So on those applications, the project sponsor must indicate the priority order of their submitted projects. The highest priority of their 3 applications should receive 3 stars as an answer to this question, while the lowest priority of their 3 submitted applications should only receive 1 star. Now, if you as an agency only submit 1 application, then you should put 3 stars as the answer to this question because it is your highest priority submission. Then we have a few additional narrative questions that are included. The first being a description of how the proposed project addresses the goals and objectives set out in the 2050 MTP, because we do need that planning consistency with our long-range documentation, as well as a short narrative stating how the proposed project addresses the call for projects categories, purpose, and objectives. The application also asks if the candidate project is a multi-jurisdictional priority or partnership project. If so, we ask that you list who the primary project sponsor is, who the secondary sponsors are, and any notable information about the partnership that you would like to be considered with your application. And as we near the end of the application, there are 3 preset areas for you to upload additional supplemental documents or information. If you have more than 3 files to submit as supplemental information for your application, or your file size exceeds 500 megabytes, then please contact myself or MetroPlan Orlando staff as soon as possible so we can discuss your supplementary materials. Now, the last step of the application includes agreeing to the acknowledgments, which are listed here on the screen, included in the application, and shown in those project guidelines for reference. You must also complete a CAPTCHA to prove that you are a human submitting this form, and then click Submit. If you have any questions about these acknowledgments, the submission process, or want to confirm that your application was received, again, please reach out to our team. And that concludes the entirety of that application. So as I mentioned, it is meant to be short, sweet, to the point, with just enough information to help us be able to compare and evaluate between these different applications once they're submitted. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this application will go live tomorrow and be open for submissions as soon as that web portal is open. And all of our Technical Advisory Committee and Transportation Systems Management and Operations, TAC and TISMO members, will receive an email notification as soon as that goes live. And please set a reminder for your calendars that applications are due by January 30th at 5 p.m. That'll allow us just enough time to be able to complete our initial reviews of these applications and develop those comparative evaluations for the working group to reconvene at the beginning of March. And if you do have any questions or experience any technical difficulties throughout the development or drafting of your application, please reach out to me via email or phone so we can discuss your specific situation, come to a resolution. You can reach me at taylor.laurent@metroplanorlando.gov or call me at 407-481-5672. All this information is shown up on the slide and included in our call for project guidelines as well for easy reference. A recording of this webinar will also be available on our YouTube channel starting tomorrow. And now that we've walked through the call for project guidelines, our eligibility criteria, and the application, does anyone have any questions today? If so, please use the raise your hand feature located at the bottom of your Zoom screen, or submit your questions to the Q&A box, which is also located at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Okay, I am not seeing any questions submitted yet under the Q&A box. And I am also not seeing any hands raised. So it looks like everyone's really excited to dive into these project guidelines and ready to submit some applications starting tomorrow. I'll go ahead and wait here on this slide for another moment or so in case anyone's typing any questions. Okay, I see one question has come in. The question is, can anyone on the agency, anybody on the agency can submit applications? So yes, anyone from the agency can submit the application. I would recommend that you coordinate internally on which applications are being submitted. Each agency can only submit 3 applications total for this application cycle. That's a good question. Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? All right, next question that came in, is there a scoring sheet? So we are doing comparative criteria instead of prioritization or scoring. Those comparative criteria are included in the project guidelines in the call for projects guidelines document, but there are 6 that are intended to be included, and that includes crash rates, fatal and serious injury crash rates, looking at those 2 separately, number of pedestrian and bicycle crashes, high injury network designations, areas of persistent poverty, and that local jurisdiction preference, which is one of the questions included as part of the application. All of those are detailed in how they're going to be looked at in those call for project success project guidelines on page 4 and 5. Another good question. Thank you. Do we have any other questions this afternoon that we want to talk through as a group and make sure are included for the record for anyone who's coming back to view this webinar starting tomorrow? All right, not seeing any other hands raised. Or, oh, one more question came in. Good timing. Is the length of the project considered? Yes, that is a required element of the application to make sure that it's included. That'll be included under the general project information section where you're putting in the name of the roadway, start limit, end limit, and that total project length in miles. And if anyone would like a refresher, if I went through any of those list of questions a little too quickly, they are included in those project call for project guidelines towards the very end of the document under Appendix A. It lists every single question that's included as part of the application. So you can work on the application, draft it outside of the portal, and then submit it electronically once you're ready. We had one other, a clarification question that just came in. So in terms of the project length being a consideration, in terms of scoring, that will be an element that's included for our working group to consider as part of the application. The project length will likely be more influential in terms of the total project cost. So as you look through the call for project guidelines, this program has a maximum amount of funding of $3 million. If you're submitting a 20-mile project, that will likely exceed the amount of funding that is available for any particular project under this program. So in terms of looking at that project length, you do want to make sure that it's right-sized for what you're applying for as part of this program. But all of those details are included in those project guidelines, included on our website and linked in the chat so everyone has quick access to them. And they will be included in tomorrow's email notification. So that way all of the relevant information is included in one email, one-stop, easy location for you to find everything you need. Okay, another question just came in. Does a proposed project need to be already designed before submitting for consideration? Uh, the project does not already need to be designed, so you can apply for design funding as part of this program. If you're submitting for construction funding, you would need to let us know what your schedule is in terms of design. So that way we can make sure that it's completed before construction could begin as early as 2032, which is the first fiscal year through which programming would occur for any projects selected through this year's application process. All really good questions that we're getting today. But through this program, we are allowing for projects to be eligible for design or preliminary engineering, construction, and CEI funding. Those are the only 3 phases through which you can apply for funding through this particular program. Do we have any other questions? Oh, yes. Do agencies have to pay for right-of-way? How would we know how much right-of-way is necessary? So yes, the local agency would be responsible for any right-of-way costs associated with the project. In terms of knowing how much right-of-way is necessary, that could be where a preliminary planning study might be able to assist with looking at those right-of-way impacts if they are associated with your project. Otherwise, that may be an opportunity or something to be considered during design. I think that would be a more project-specific question. And we can follow up on that directly if you would like to following this webinar. Hopefully that one answers your question. Do we have any other questions today? All right, I'll wait a little bit longer in case anyone's typing. Let them get that into the Q&A box. Or again, you can select the raise your hand feature to ask your question aloud. Okay, this is a good question that just came in. Will this program replace the intake applications process? So this particular program was established through our 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan to be able to create dedicated funding for off-system safety improvement projects, these high-injury network countermeasures. This is a new call for projects for us this year because of that newly adopted plan. Any projects that are selected or recommended by any projects that are selected through this call for projects process and ultimately included within the prioritized project list will then need to go through the intake process as well. So this is an application for funding to be able to be moving forward that way. Those intake applications are associated with the Florida Department of Transportation's LAP program and are required to be able to have a project be ultimately programmed in the work program and our transportation improvement program. The application that we walked through today was designed to be incredibly similar to the intake application process, that standard process that many of you have been a part of. So that way it limits any potential overlaps between those and helps make that process a little more efficient for selected projects to move forward in that process. And then I did see one hand that was raised. So Gus Castro, you're recognized. You should be allowed to unmute yourself now, Gus.
Yeah, I didn't ask any questions. I don't know why. Let me lower my hand.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm glad it's all making sense for you, Gus. Thank you. Okay, another question came in. If it is a joint application, say a city and county doing a project together, do both agencies need to be LAP certified? The answer to that question is no. The primary project sponsor, so the one who would be formally responsible for seeing through the completion of that project, taking the lead on it, if you will, would be the agency that needs to be LAP certified. If you are pursuing a joint application or a partnership project, I would strongly recommend that you have some early coordination meetings regarding that, so it can be explained within the application when it's submitted this month. Another really good question. Thank you. And I see another hand was raised. Rami, you're recognized.
Hi, I was just trying to understand it a little better. I still confused about that question I sent about the intake application. So if we have already projects in the intake every year we do intake application for them, do those processes gonna stay in place with the same projects, or we replacing that by doing like do we have for the project every year we do intake application for them. Do we have to do it in this application? It must be happening this way, or we still have that process happening later
Mhm.
for intake application?
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
So for anyone who has any of our local agencies that have projects already programmed, so you're already seeing a project programmed with funding associated with that project in the Transportation Improvement Program, the TIP, or within the FDOT work program. Uh, those projects are updated once per year through that intake process as well. That's generally when you'll get an email from me saying, hey, we want to check in on your project, or an email from FDOT. We want to check in, make sure, see how things are going, if there's been any changes. That will still occur for any projects that are already programmed. That is not associated with this call for projects. This call for projects is a new call for new projects for safety countermeasures identified within our Vision Zero or safety action plans that have been developed over the past few years. So these would be for new projects that are not yet programmed uh, within the TIP or the FDOT work program. If a project is selected through this call for projects, then it would newly start a project intake application to try and get new to be programmed following its selection through this process. Hopefully that helps. Rami, did that work?
Yeah, I mean, we have projects who is not really programmed yet, but we keep applying every year. So I'm not sure if we should apply with this program as well or not. But we do intake application for them every year, but still not programmed. The money is not programmed yet. Mm.
Okay, how about I'm going to make a note to call you after this webinar, so that way we can
Sure,
talk about your specific projects.
sure, sure.
Mhm.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
Mm.
Okay. And one other question came in through the Q&A box. Has it been confirmed that the agency and not the project needs to be LAP certified? So that one is a good question. I will need to follow up with FDOT with about their LAP certification requirements and any changes that may have happened. I believe, and again, verify this with your FDOT representative, and I will be following up with them as well, that projects need to be lap certified at this point in time. But again, that's something that we can confirm. Oh, and I'm getting some notes behind the scenes. Lap certification is for an agency, but certification is done on a project by project basis. Thank you so much. It's no longer an annual one-time certification in total. Thank you, Alex, for sending me that information. Do we have any other questions? Wait another few seconds here to see if any other questions come in the Q&A box. Let you finish typing. But all of the information that was discussed here today is included within those call for projects guidelines available on our website. And again, will be distributed tomorrow more directly via email with a direct link to this call for project application. And if you do have any follow-up questions, our team is here for you. Feel free to reach out to myself, Alex, any others, to make sure that you get the information that you need. And not seeing anything else come in, I will go ahead and ask if there are any members of the public that wish to make a public comment. If so, please use the raise your hand feature located at the bottom of your Zoom screen, or again, submit your questions via the Q&A box, which is also located at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Wait here a moment to see if any hands are raised or any new questions appear in the Q&A box. And seeing none, either from our members or the public, I will say thank you, everyone, for your participation in this 2026 Call for Projects virtual information meeting. For our Tech and TISMO members, please keep an eye out for our notification email tomorrow when the application portal officially opens. And again, if you do have any questions, feel free to reach out. My contact information is included not only in this webinar, but also in those Call for Project guidelines for easy accessibility. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a great day.